The earth is the brain and the body into which we were born. In some nearly parallel way, we face not only a crisis in numbers of people diagnosed with dementia, but as a culture, we are stricken with this disease and its attending violence. For why else would we knowingly destroy the planet that sustains our very lives? There's definitely willets out here.
Susan Cerulean has a new book.
The name of my new book is I Have Been Assigned the Single Bird, a daughter's memoir. The name came through intuition. At the time, I was doing two things. I was taking care of my father, who had moved to Tallahassee because he had mid-stage dementia. And I was also volunteering as a steward of shorebirds on a little spoil island off of Apalachicola. On that island, there were only a few birds nesting, and I had my one dad, so it just developed into a lot of thinking about those two things. Both of them were sort of meditative and required me to spend a lot of time sitting and observing and just being with, and not necessarily being able to fix anything for either one. But my assignment was to stay the course and care for them as best I could, both of them.
Two single birds, each afflicted by a different kind of dementia. As her father struggled with the decline of brain and body, Susan began to realize how shorebirds and shorebird habitat face their own decline.
You can't see the losses out here right now. It looks pretty pristine. It's like, wow, yay, there's 7 oyster catchers. The least terns are feeding, and we saw a black skimmer. There's 2 godwits, and that's all great. But these birds, these shorebirds, since 1970, have lost 70% of their numbers. And if somebody's not watching and reporting back to the rest of us, then we don't see it. Just like, and I felt the same way in the nursing home with my dad. You know, we tend to think of people with dementia as something to kind of give up on, in a sense. By sitting with him in the same way that we're sitting with the shorebirds, I could see, yes, the losses, but also how much of him was still there.
Here at Bald Point State Park, we can likewise see that there are still places for shorebirds to thrive.
That's the problem for shorebirds. That's why shorebirds and seabirds, like the terns, that's why they're so at risk right now, because they require beaches like this and oyster bars to nest on. This would be a good place for an oyster catcher to nest if there weren't people coming down the beach. They need to have space to kind of see what's coming and drive it off if they can. And that's why a little island is good, because the mid-sized mammals have a harder time swimming out there to get the eggs. They need a healthy bay. They need a healthy estuary that has these kinds of oyster reefs that we're looking at, and all the little invertebrates that live in those oyster reefs. And clean water. So they kind of need the same things we do. They definitely do. Regarding my dad, he had been in a nursing home in New Jersey. And I felt like if he was just closer by, and I know lots of people can relate to this, that I could take care of his needs. I took him to a gerontologist. We got some dental work done. I found some caregivers that he really loved. And then, what was there to do? I kind of sat back and looked at things and said, he's not getting better. No matter what we all do, the course of this disease has an end point, and it's death. And so had to change my goals or my sense of my abilities. I couldn't save him, but I could care for him.
Dementia has one single end. While our coastal ecosystems are facing a dementia born of climate change and habitat loss, their fate is not as final.
I believe that we can redeem our species. The derangement of our times is rooted in how we live. That's the difference between my father's illness and the illness of the earth. It follows that we can mitigate to some extent the damage to climate and biodiversity losses. But the work has to start now, and it has to be swift.
For WFSU, I'm Rob Diaz de Villegas. For more on oysters, shorebirds, and other segments with Susan Cerulean, visit the WFSU Ecology blog. And if you like what you see, subscribe.